The following unofficial rebroadcast of Twit Live is brought to you by Odd TV and CashFly. CashFly's global network delivers your content, ensuring your website, streaming media, and downloads exceed expectations at cashfly.com. CES, like what you think is going to be interesting. Just a 5-minute thing, like, see ya, take care, enjoy your meal, nice to meet you, thanks for coming by, take care, bye-bye. See you, everybody. They're saying goodbye now. Say goodbye. I unsqueeze you. You do not need to be squeezed.
Yeah, I'm tricky.
He's tricksy that way. Double box.
Okay, well, I did have a small section in the show notes to talk about pre-CES, but we can...
You can put it in the show, and then we'll just reprise it. In fact, we can edit around it, because basically what's going to happen is Kiki tomorrow and I are going to do, oh, we're getting excited, here's CES, let's check in with the various hosts to see what they're going to be talking about or what they think the big stories will be.
All right.
And we'll just edit it in, so we don't even have to make it a separate piece.
Okay.
It'll just be in there.
That'll work.
It'll be part of it. Okay, let's see. This is Twitch. 52. And recording you, recording me. Man, my schedule is now just chock full of podcasts.
Yeah.
I do a lot of shows, and you're a podcast now, and it's official. You're up on the twit.tv, and you're on iTunes now officially, which is good.
Yep. The only somebody in the chat room just told me that the word Twitch is not in the description or anything anywhere, so when you search for it,
I'll fix that.
It's harder to do.
Yep.
They had to actually type in "this week in computer hardware."
Oh, boy. That's not good. Let me just fix that real quick.
And I'm sure it didn't show up in the Twit channel yet, but I'm sure that will happen soon.
Yeah, Scott Simpson, the guy who does that, is on vacation to January 4th. So all of the shows, we added 6 new shows this week, and none of them are in the iTunes. They call it the Twit Artist Store. None of them are there yet because Scott's not there to do it. But he'll get in on Monday, and he'll fix it all.
That'll work.
52, 52, 52.
I assume you'll have your Twit CES one in there, too.
Yes. We've already got an audio feed up, and we're waiting for approval on the video feed. So there will be audio and video feed. And yes, those are my feet, East Coast girls. Girl, what about it? He says, are those your feet on that scale? Yes, they are. Why? Did they look funny?
Did you buy a tweeting scale? Am I missing something?
I bought a tweeting scale, and there it is. It's tweeting. It tweets my weight every time I weigh myself.
So what if somebody else goes and stands on it, like your son or something?
It would be pretty funny, because it would tweet their... Oh, I don't have internet anymore. It would tweet their weight. So if all of a sudden I weigh 100 pounds, you'll know.
Some diet.
I had to be very careful because... this is a very reflective scale. I'll leave it at that. I had to really look at that picture very closely before I put it up there.
Make sure you check.
Yes, I did check carefully.
Oh goodness!
I worked with
that would have ended up. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Cat Schwartz. You remember that?
Yep.
Poor Cat.
Did you check the file and all the Photoshop iterations?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned Cat's mistake. Cat Schwartz, for those who don't know,
World learned.
She was my co-host on Call for Help. Very lovely young lady. And for reasons no one really will understand ever, she posed for some topless photos. Actually, the photographer is one of the people we worked with. Loved the photos of her face and wanted to use those photos as like avatars or whatever, profile pictures. So she cropped it with Photoshop, but what she didn't understand was that Photoshop left a thumbnail in of the full image, topless image. And somebody quickly discovered that, and those pictures were distributed immediately. Hither and thither on the grand old internet. So, I think we're ready to begin here. Oh, you know what I need is your notes. I'm going to go to docs.google.
They should be there already this time, so that's a plus.
Always a plus. All items, Twitch 52 show notes. I see them right there. Let me start a friend feed room as long as I'm here. I do have, thank goodness, we have multiple connections to the internet. So even though,
yeah, Colleen was bragging about getting DOCSIS 3.
we got
last
we
week
like
too.
DOCSIS 3 so much that we ordered 2 more connections. So it really
What's the upstream speed change?
it's like 9 megabits upstream.
It makes me ill.
You know, you don't have the best internet.
No, well, I get like 22, 23 down, but our up is capped at 1.5. So
Well, 1.5
really
is
limiting.
fine. I mean, it's not bad.
Well, it's not awful, but it's
Well, we're
you know,
really
when
going
I'm
to use that extra bandwidth
make
because
HD videos and we're trying to upload them.
yeah, exactly. The reason
1.5 is not that great.
we're adding 2 more lines is so that each editor will have his own high-speed upload because we upload 3 and 4 gigabyte mezzanine files of every show.
I'll be curious to see how they, since cable is, we always refer to cable as the shared connection. How are they bringing different nodes into the cottage?
Yeah.
See, try to push them and see how much. Let's see how much bandwidth you have in the cottage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm thrilled that we're getting DOCSIS 3, but you're right. It is bandwidth capped. I mean, effectively.
Right. Depending on if you've got one node coming into the house, they're not used to having more than one cable modem per.
Right. I should ask them if they're installing it right now. All right. I'm ready, Eddie, and let's begin this program. What do you say?
Alrighty.
It's time for Twitch This Week in Computer Hardware. Our host is here, the man behind the PC Perspective at http://PCPer.com, Ryan Shrout.
Hello, how are you doing?
From near Louisville, Kentucky.
Closer to Cincinnati.
Closer to Cincy.
I'm about 10 minutes from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh.
And about an hour and a half from Louisville.
Oh, I take it back. But you are in Kentucky.
Very, 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 very northern part of Kentucky.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Every once in a while, I wear a Kentucky shirt or something.
Just to remind us.
Just so everybody knows I don't live out in California or something like that.
This is exciting. This is an exciting episode because this is the week before the Consumer Electronics Show. Actually, in some ways, it might not be an exciting episode because you may be waiting for stuff that you're going to see next week, or do you already know kind of everything you're going to see?
No, I don't think we know everything we're going to see. What happens with this week is because of Christmas holiday and the New Year's holiday. Really, in general, this week is almost always incredibly slow.
Right.
So that's why we don't have a lot of individual news stories to talk about from last week. But concerning CES, we do get. I don't know exactly what we're going to see most of the time, but I will talk to enough people to try to figure out where I need to be at what times to see the most interesting things. So, like, I know that when Nvidia is going to have their event, I know when ASUS is going to have their event, and those guys, and I have a general idea, but they, when Nvidia wants you to come to their event, and I'm like, well, okay.
What are you going to talk about?
If you're just going to talk about stuff I already know about, I'm not going to bother showing up. So they try to tease you a little bit and say, here's what we're kind of talk about.
But they don't want to say too much.
Right. They don't want to leak out the information, but they want to make sure people are intrigued enough to show up. Because as you know, just as well as I do, the CES scheduling gets intense.
Hairy.
Like 3 weeks ago, my schedule was full, and now we're up to the point of, there's 5 of us that are going to be out there, and we're starting to break up people into groups now, and because we have overlapping meetings and that kind of stuff. So,
well, I hope we can get some of your time, maybe on Friday, because I'm very curious, to see what you think is the big story. We're going to have Paul Thurrott with us. We're going to have Dick DiBartolo. We're going to have all these different people. Patrick Norton will stop by, and each person. Scott Wilkinson, our home theater guy, has a different take on what the big story of CES is. You'll be looking at computer hardware, of course, and so it's going to be great because we can say, well, for you, Ryan Shrout, what's the big story? And my experience with CES, and I haven't been since 2004, because it overlaps with Macworld Expo, and because of other time commitments, I haven't been able to go to Vegas. Yeah, so I've been stuck up here, but I remember when we went to Comdex and then later CES. You could it's like that old adage, you do all the planning before battle begins, but everything goes out the window as soon as you hit the ground, because you don't really know what the big story is. You could look at all the press releases, and certainly I'm getting a ton of press releases. Please come by our booth. We're going to be showing this and that. But you don't know. You don't know now what the big story is going to be, do you?
No, I don't think so. I think I know what some of the potentials will be, but it will be, you know, if NVIDIA is going to announce Tegra 2, are they going to announce a new product with it? Or is it just going to be a product announcement? You know, those are the types of things that we don't really know for sure yet. But yeah, we've got scheduled time with you on Friday to do Twitch from the show floor. So, you know, we'll see what we can squeeze into a half an hour and how much hardware I can steal from these vendors to bring and show off at the show floor. So I think it'll be exciting.
Also, should point out that the CES is a zoo. I guess you kind of already said that, but I mean, it's not merely time to have meetings, but it's hard to see everything.
Yes, especially now, you know, back in probably when you stopped going in 2004, probably most of the meetings and the stuff going on was still in the convention halls. That has changed over the last 3 or 4 years or so, where now a lot of these vendors, especially the vendors that I deal with, some of the smaller companies that, you know, focus on hardware components and that kind of stuff for PCs, they don't necessarily have a booth on the show floor, but they have a suite at a hotel somewhere. And while that sounds a lot nicer than wandering around the show floor and all this busy stuff, the problem is getting anywhere in Las Vegas from hotel to hotel.
Impossible.
If you have a meeting from 12 to 1 at the Bellagio, and then you have a meeting from 1 to 2 at the Wynn,
you're not going
to you can't get to those. So you gotta put a half-hour space in between everything. So I would kind of like to revert back to the day of where everything was in the convention hall, and you didn't have to worry about transportation quite as much and how bad traffic's going to be. But it is a zoo. I mean, it's exciting and it's fun, and I'm sure. I think all 4 of the guys that are going with me, it's their first time going to CES.
Oh, that'll be fun. It's always fun to take virgins.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. You know, I'm kind of a little worried about, you know, trying to send people off that have never been to these giant convention halls before.
Well, you've warned them, I'm sure.
Trust me. You'll just wander around.
It's a long walk.
You'll find them.
The other thing you'll hear us say over and over again is the stuff you see at CES is not necessarily, and I don't know how it is in the PC industry, but certainly with TVs and a lot of equipment, it's not necessarily going to be available soon. In fact, in many cases, won't be available till the fall, if at all. People show things at CES that never come out. I remember SED TVs have been at CES for years, never shipped. OLED TVs, you know, they've got 12 inches now. I mean, it's been there's a lot of stuff that's shown at CES, looking for a market or, you know, kind of concept stuff. So
yeah, and it does happen with the computer world too. I mean, we talked about it last week when we talked about keyboard PCs. Last year at CES, Asus showed off this really cool
perfect example
keyboard PC, right? Where it had an iPhone-sized touchscreen where the number pad should be, and an Atom-based computer inside with wireless HDMI. They told us, and all sorts of kind of stuff. And well, it never surfaced. So that's one of those things where they're like you said, they're testing for the market. Are people excited about this?
Right.
And that was an interesting case, in that a lot of people were excited about it, and we saw it, you know, previewed a couple of times, and we still never got to see it.
Still didn't get it.
Still didn't get it. But yeah, it's always kind of, it's like going to the candy store and then them telling you that we'll have to send this to you next Christmas type of deal, because you go out there in January and you see these new TVs, and you want that TV. Say you need a new TV now. Well, if that's going to be 7 or 8 months out, is that worth waiting for? And you always have this debate, and they never really want to tell you what their release schedules are anyway. And it's interesting, to say the least.
Well, I'm excited. It's just going to be a lot of fun, and if nothing else, we'll cover the kind of the party scene, the lifestyle, the weird events, the craziness. And we've got an amazing remote setup that Colleen has built. Dr. Kiki will be with me, and she's great. Yep. And so, hey, the worst that'll happen is Kiki and I will just have a great time.
You know, I've got to mention the intern that's working for us doing video and audio editing. He edits our podcast, Ken. He's in the chat rooms with us all the time. I'm sure he's in there right now. Well, he's not 21 yet, so he can't even go to a lot of these parties that we're going to. And so I had that discussion with him beforehand. I was like, look, you might have to watch it on the live stream.
Oh,
but hey, he still wanted to come out, so I still think he'll have a good time. So
he's gonna have a blast. So I guess before we wrap up our CES conversation, is there anything you would suggest we look for?
You know, I think what we will see a ton of, which is something we've already kind of talked about, is a bunch of new netbooks. We'll see a lot of new netbooks and notebooks based on Pine Trail. We're going to see 2 new full new processor platform launches from Intel. basically right at CES, the Clarkdale and the Arendelle. So these are kind of the mainstream. These aren't super high performance parts, mainstream parts that integrate graphics on the die and that kind of stuff. So we'll see, hopefully, new mobile processors, new mobile systems in general that will have pretty high performance, dual core hyper-threaded systems, but be able to run at lower power consumption. So maybe closer to netbook style 11-inch, 12-inch screens, but have a lot more power than, say, this Core 2 Duo Lenovo system that I have sitting here. NVIDIA has made no secret about it. They're going to talk about Tegra at CES.
Tegra 2.
Tegra 2 was what they'll probably announce, and I think they'll have a couple of Tegra 2 devices to demonstrate, but I really want to see devices using Tegra currently, like now Tegra. I think the current iteration of Tegra has a lot of potential that has been unrealized. We've got the Zune HD and not much else using Tegra now. We've seen previews for devices. We talked about that pre-rendered tablet last week that looks really cool, and it's supposed to use Tegra, but when are we ever going to really see it online or see it available or anything like that? So I think NVIDIA knows that they're in a spot where they have to push their unique technologies, and Tegra is definitely one of those unique technologies that they can stand out from what Atom can do and what ARM can do and things like that. I think there'll still be some cool stuff from the component level types of things. I don't think we're going to see any new product announcements, but I think you'll see some new technologies. Expect to see, AMD came out with the multi-monitor gaming Eyefinity, where you can have 3 30-inch displays, and they've previewed 6 monitors connected to a single graphics card and all that kind of stuff. And these extreme PC gaming iterations, I think NVIDIA will have answers to that. It may involve multiple monitors. It may involve 3D. Really not sure yet at this point, but I think they'll demonstrate some of that even before the products that utilize those are available, try to build some excitement. So I still think there's some cool stuff for hardware enthusiasts, even though it seems like, based on what we were just talking about, that it's almost all notebooks and mobility. That's definitely like the kind of growth trend, the upward march. That's where we'll see most of our stuff, but there will still be some interesting tech out there. I hope to see a lot of USB 3.0 stuff and things like that as well.
I know one thing that we're going to see is our Lincoln MKS. We're driving down there. Is it an MKS or an MKT? MKT, which is an incredible Lincoln, equipped, of course, with Sync by Microsoft. I'm a big fan. They're sponsoring our visit to CES. We thank them so much. We're going to be covering the show live January 6th through 10th at live.twit.tv. You can also subscribe to our Twit Live at CES podcast, so there'll be audio and video at twit.tv, or you can go there and subscribe on iTunes or the Zune store or any other podcatcher, so you make sure you get every episode. I don't know how many episodes, at least one a day, probably more than that. And all of our hosts are going to be there. Ryan and his team from PC Perspective, Paul Thurrott from Windows Weekly, Dick DiBartolo from the Daily GizWiz, GDGT's Ryan Block will be covering cell phones and gadgets. We've got Will Harris will be there. Scott Wilkinson covering home theater. It's going to be a great team we've put together. Everybody will be there having a great time, and you'll be able to watch it live, wall to wall, at live.twit.tv. And if you see me driving around in a Lincoln, just hail me, pull me over. I'll give you a lift. and while I'm doing it, though, I got to warn you, I'm going to show off because I love my Sync. It's the hands-free calling, music and podcast search, turn-by-turn navigation. Available exclusively on Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles. If you want to know more, go to syncmyride.com. You get the demo. Find out all about it. That's the site that every Sync owner has, is their personal site. When you go to syncmyride.com, you get updates
Sync
there.
My Ride podcast.
No, syncmyride.com.
Oh, okay.
I have the wrong URL on the screen. Let me fix that. that works too, but that's the old URL. We're going to send them right to the site that the owners of the Ford and Lincoln and Mercury Sync have. You have a USB port on all your cars, all right? So if you got Sync, so you can just connect up your iPod, your Zune, your Droid, but you can also take a USB key, get updates from syncmyride.com and update it. I could go on and on. I won't belabor it. Just check it out. Next time you get a chance, go to your Ford, Lincoln, or Mercury dealer. Say, I want to test drive the Sync. Show me the Sync. It's so cool. Sync. Syncmyride.com. We'll see you in CES in Vegas. I'm excited, Ryan. We're going to talk to the CEO of Ford. And the guy,
I think Ford will have some of
Ford's
the
gonna have
more
a hu-
interesting announcements there.
we're seeing
based on
already
what
some
I've
stuff
seen.
trickling out. Yeah, they're going to put Wi-Fi in the cars. They're going to have an iTunes tagging for HD radio. I think that this is just the stuff that they're letting trickle out is just the icing. There's going to be some significant stuff. They're making this a platform. It's very exciting what they're doing. I think of all the car companies, they are the most forward-thinking in terms of technology, end user technology in a car.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's really neat.
Yep.
It's really fun. I'm really glad that we could participate with them on this. So let's talk about and we have some stories to talk about.
We do.
Item one is the Nvidia Fermi. What is Fermi, first of all? Because that doesn't ring a bell.
Nvidia Fermi is the upcoming generation of GPU from Nvidia. So this is the successor to their GT200 architecture that has been around since the release of the GTX 280 and the 285 and the 275 and the 295. All those are based on GT200 architecture. Fermi is the code name for the architecture built on the ground up to be DirectX 11 compatible. It's very GPU compute based. The first time we saw Fermi was actually at the GPU Technology Conference where NVIDIA first kind of talked about the architecture. But really at that show, they were talking about how important and beneficial it was going to be to GPU computing, high performance computing, that type of thing. They didn't really get into the gaming aspect of what the technology was able to do yet because they were obviously waiting for their release. So I think we posted back in September, September 30th, I think I posted an article that kind of gives you an overview of the Fermi architecture and what you can expect in terms of performance, how it compares to AMD's Radeon 5000 series, which is their AMD's most up-to-date GPU technology, kind of how those compete. But we didn't have a whole lot of specifics at the time. What we did learn, we got a couple of interesting pieces, and they all kind of coalesce in this one little article that I posted up yesterday. And one of the big announcements that NVIDIA made at the technology conference last September was that Oak Ridge Labs, which is obviously a huge, prestigious computing government scientific lab, that they were building a supercomputer built around upcoming NVIDIA Fermi graphics cards. So that was obviously, they didn't go into a whole lot of details. They're a little bit secretive, obviously being kind of a government run and that kind of stuff for what they're doing and how many cards they're using or anything like that. But anytime you can get your name attached to a supercomputer that an organization like Oak Ridge uses, that's a big deal. You know, maybe they don't make any money on it. Maybe they sell all the parts to these guys at cost, but now you are said in the same breath with every high-performance computing institute or commercial or educational or anything like that. It's obviously had the potential to be a really big boon for their high-performance computing, their Tesla brands of products. Now, what's important to note is that NVIDIA has GeForce, they have Quadro, and they have Tesla. GeForce is obviously for consumers and gamers. Quadro is for professional developers, people who do a lot of CAD work, rendering work, even video work. That type of thing. And then Tesla is kind of like the server-based product line that you might put 4 Tesla cards in a rack mount 2U or 3U rack mount server and be able to access that hardware in supercomputing applications and simulations and all that kind of stuff. So that, you know, when we're talking with Oak Ridge Labs, we're talking about Tesla branded products, but all 3 of those products use the same architecture at its core. They're all using Fermi and all of its shading processing power and all that kind of stuff. And we've talked about this before. The difference between a GeForce and a Quadro card is not very significant. It's a lot of software differences, not a lot of hardware differences. Same with Tesla. You know, Tesla cards won't have a graphics card output. It won't have a display output, rather. So you don't buy a Tesla card to install it in your computer and hook a monitor up to it. It's really only for computing purposes. Tesla cards might have 6 to 8 gigs of memory on each card because of those how much memory these compute models need and that kind of stuff. Well, the problems that have come out recently these are all still rumors, we're still speculating and everything, is that there's a chance that the Oak Ridge Labs deal might have hit a snag. There was a story posted at another website that basically claimed that because of heat issues the Oak Ridge Labs either had to delay or halt production on the supercomputer using the Fermi architecture. Obviously, that would be bad news for NVIDIA, not in terms of profit, but in terms of being associated with the correct people in the industry.
Embarrassing.
Yes. And also the fact that the story mentioned specifically power would be an issue sets off another set of alarms that maybe this GPU, which I think was going to be like 570 millimeter square, which is a huge chip. I mean, it's an
Well, it's got
absolutely
512
enormous.
cores on it.
Yes. Yes.
It's huge.
Yes. It would be a very big chips, but if they're running into heat issues, then that could be a big problem, not just for Tesla, but for Quadro and GeForce potentially as well, because even if you're building a card for a consumer, you have to fit it within a certain thermal envelope in order to install it into a system and have power supplies be able to supply enough juice for it and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of one rumor. Now, NVIDIA, we talked to NVIDIA about it today, and they basically said, look, there has been no change to our arrangement with Oak Ridge in terms of the supercomputer deal. However, we can't dispute anything he's saying directly because of the non-disclosures in place between NVIDIA and Oak Ridge Labs. And they basically came out with the same thing. It was like, look, you're dealing with this government entity. They have very strict requirements on what you can say and can't say in public or in private or anything like that. So we're not going to risk losing them as a customer because of some story on a website. So if that's true, then maybe this is an inaccurate story, but it does kind of correlate to the other problem that we are thinking. When we talked about Fermi in September, it was a 512 shader, 512 core part. Well, the first products that were announced last week that were for the supercomputing market only used 448 shaders. And so that obviously means you're getting a drop in performance over what they were quoting us back in September, about a 15% drop in the potential compute power. And it also means that maybe this correlates with the power issues, right? So if your chip is drawing too much power, one of the ways you can fix it is to cut down on how fast it is, whether in terms of clock speeds or how many cores you have, and that will lower the power draw of the chip. So dropping from 512 to 448 would give you a drop of about the same power consumption. And they said in the spec sheet that this 448 core part uses about 225 watts. So that's kind of at the limit for a consumer part. So if we translate that over from supercomputing part to consumer desktop part, to people who are listening to the show who are interested in gaming and this kind of stuff, there's a chance now that the first parts we get from NVIDIA will not have 512 shaders for the GeForce cards, but they might start with 448. Now, what that means for performance in terms of actual gameplay and anti-aliasing support and all this other kind of stuff is unknown. We don't know how this is going to translate to actual performance, but what we do know is anytime you get a company that starts to backtrack on their specs, backtrack on their speeds, they're going to have to start backtracking on their performance of the part, how much power it's going to use. It's never a good sign, right? I mean, and it's kind of comes into play again because this is a part that was supposed to be released at the end of September, and now they're saying it's going to be available in March of 2010, the GeForce cards. That's a significant difference. I mean, we're talking 6 months of delay. That's 6 months of time that AMD has the high-end market to themselves. It's 6 months where they can build on market share. It's 6 months where NVIDIA doesn't have the mind share, which as we often talk about on here, the super high-end Intel Core i7 975 processor that sells for $1,000 is not purchased very often. But people associate, well, if Intel has the highest performing chip at $1,000, chances are their $300 chip is going to be better than the competition's $300 chip. And the same thing happens in the world of graphics cards. That's why even before we kind of saw this slowdown in enthusiast system building and gaming, that everybody wanted to have that flagship card that was $600. Not a lot of people sold it, or not a lot of people bought it rather, but it created this domino effect where if you could win, if you had the fastest part, people associated your name with the fastest parts pretty much down the line for the entirety of that generation of graphics cards. So NVIDIA's, they've basically said, NVIDIA's reply is, look, we said Fermi, the GeForce version of Fermi would be out in Q1 2010. March is considered Q1 of 2010. Yes, they're right. I guess we can't really deny that, but still, I think it's important to see how this architecture might be changing in the background. Again, and this is the problem for us, is it's really speculation. It's really it's news, but we can't say for sure if it's true now. We won't know until March of 2010 when you and I are on this show again that week talking about the release of the graphics cards and how they perform, and did it come with 512 shaders or did it come out with 448? How much power does it use? That's when we'll know if any of this translates. But what we do know for today is that AMD has got to be giddy, because all of those 5800 cards and 5700 cards that they have for sale today, and they have had for sale since September, October, are going to continue to have free reign in the market as the performance and price performance dominant leader, at least until March. So that's good news for AMD, but potentially negative news for Nvidia.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll find out. Will this will be the top of the line, Nvidia graphics?
Yeah,
this is their future.
This would have to be it would have to be the dominant architecture for them. It would be their new high-end enthusiast part, and then the idea would be Nvidia's design goals with GPUs have always been create one giant chip that has 512 cores, and it's your king of the hill, best performing card on the market type of deal, and then you start to cut it back. Maybe you make a version that's 448. Maybe you make a version that has 396, and then those parts you sell for lower and lower prices. Right. Versus what AMD
but you just
done.
Disable the cores, right? You don't take them out. You just disable them.
Well, yeah. Usually for the first iteration, you bin out the parts. So if they
don't work, if they don't, 12 of them don't work, right? Yeah.
Half of them don't work. You fuse it off.
Right.
You sell the chip for a lower cost to recoup some of your.
Martin's making that point in our chat room that if it does ship with 448 instead of 512, it's probably a yield issue more than anything else.
Yeah, and that yield comes into the heat issue, comes into all kinds of different things. Basically, the theory that some of these NVIDIA negative stories, that what they're putting forth is like, look, they designed this chip and it's not easily manufacturable, and that's why they have power issues. That's why they might have to cut back on shader counts. That's why they have to cut back on clock speeds and that kind of stuff as well. So it's one of those things where everything affects everything else in this ecosystem of designing a chip. It might also have to do with the fact that TSMC, who is making the chip for NVIDIA, has had lots and lots of problems with their 40 nanometer technology, which is what this is being built on. So there's a whole bunch of potential problems that creep up when you're doing this. And we want NVIDIA to succeed. We want them to create the next best part so that AMD has to come back and make the next best part again. And obviously that's how the competition wheel usually and should hopefully work. But right now, the rumors that circulate aren't great. It's still possible that NVIDIA's 448 core part, if that's the best we get, is still going to beat out whatever AMD has in March. It's still possible, but it looks bad on NVIDIA to talk about 512 and then not release it. Type of deal. Again, it kind of goes back into that embarrassment issue, but we'll just have to wait and see.
We shall see. Speaking of embarrassment, it was a year ago at the E3 conference that OnLive announced this really, I thought, quite interesting, and I got very excited about it, gaming platform.
Yeah, I did too.
That renders the game remotely on servers, which means you can have a low and slow, inexpensive part, maybe even a TV set or just a little handheld unit playing the games on your TV set. They were going to come out by now. Still aren't.
Yes. No, they're still not out. The reason we bring this up again is that OnLive, who started by Steve Perlman.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy who did Web TV.
Yep. So he's the CEO of this new company, and he actually did a demonstration of OnLive technology at Columbia University just to computer science students, I assume. So that's interesting that they were showing it there. I'm not sure if they're going to have a presence at CES, actually. I would hope they would. The idea behind the technology is very appealing. When you and I talked about it, and when everybody really talked about it when they first announced it, the potential is there that there's a lot of drawbacks to it, though, right?
Latency.
They wanted us to believe that you could play a first-person shooter on this when most people would say, look, it's not it's not really feasible under the current networking conditions that exist in this country today.
We have a member of our chat room, FTW, who says he is beta testing it right now, and he says input and render lag is the problem.
Yes. I wouldn't doubt it at all. So I think it would be good for some gaming, but first-person shooter is definitely the issue. The other company that's doing something similar to this is Otoy. Those are the people that are behind. They actually did the rendering for Benjamin Button. So they have a lot of expertise in these types of things. And what they were more excited about than gaming, they said gaming was important, but what they were more excited about is like running Photoshop or Premiere or Final Cut Pro on these remote servers, something where you could use all that processing power and the input lag is not as important or noticeable when you're doing like applications and editing and that kind of stuff. Whereas in real-time, high-performance gaming, it is a never, or it was a never. It would be a never.
I take it back. He says FTW says he's in a beta with 100,000 other users, and Crysis it works fine.
Huh?
What resolution FTW are you getting?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Out of this, could you even know?
I'd like to see.
He says 720p. Yeah.
And is he going to a set-top box? Is he going to his computer? I assume it would have to be like a set-top box and stuff too. So, but it's. I mean, they're showing it again. Obviously, we've got people in this chat room that have used it, which is actually really cool. But it's not out to.
He's running it on a PC, 720p on Time Warner. There's a small client that runs on a Windows PC. Which is not the point, by the way. If you've got a Windows PC, you don't really need OnLive, right? Unless the only way you can get the game, maybe they're replacing Steam. But it was my understanding the point of this is not to play it on a computer, but to play it on your TV set.
Well, if you have an underpowered computer, think of it like a dummy terminal. Okay,
good point.
Maybe you buy a $200 net-top PC that's fast enough to decode the video that's coming into you, but not fast enough to play Crysis.
Right.
So, I mean, that's another iteration for it as well. But I think the end game for them, what they would love to be, is to be in every cable box, every satellite box, basically in every TV. Yeah. Hook up a USB cable controller rather, and
that's what they're pitching, of course. Yeah.
Right. And they might be successful one day. I haven't got to try it hands on. So, and I know I was asked about doing a demo of it through the Otoy, not through OnLive, and there was then they found out I was in Cincinnati area. They're like, "Oh, that's too far away. Our only beta servers are in California." Wow. So it's very server placement dependent and how your pings go and this kind of stuff. I mean, just like everything else.
He's in LA. Now this video, by the way, you can see it at pcper.com. Ryan's got it embedded on his website. Looks like mostly a presentation. Does he demo it a little bit later on?
Yeah, I think if you go to minute 12, he shows you the user interface, or minute 12 or so. He kind of goes through the user interface and what it actually looks like. But he does actually demo the process of it.
He's got Crysis on there.
Yeah. So there you can see him scrolling through the different games and titles that he would have access to and that kind of stuff.
I'd love to see him play it.
Oh, and FTW says he shows the iPhone app at the end of the
iPhone. Ooh.
At the end of the video here as well. So,
and he's running it on a Mac. It looks like it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the benefit is the Otoy version. Again, I don't have as much experience with the OnLive, but the Otoy version you could run it in a browser. It was basically using streaming video.
Of course, we've got Quake Live running in a browser.
Right.
Mac and Windows.
Yeah, and if it's only doing video decompression. Right at this point in the thing, then it shouldn't take a whole lot of processing power. So it's interesting. I hope we see more stuff about it at CES.
If he shows it, we'll be there. We'll play with
definitely.
it. Yeah,
definitely.
I will enlist your help.
Absolutely, I will be there.
Now, this is an interesting story from the New York Times, which has been, by the way, the journal of record for the tech industry this year. I mean, this month. I mean, the leaks about Apple, New York Times. I mean, this is really interesting. So now they're saying they think the FTC is setting up Nvidia for x86 products, setting them up for a suit.
Well, remember we talked about the FTC filing suit against Intel,
right? And
they weren't asking for monetary. They weren't going to fine them. They couldn't. If the FTC's role is really not to fine people, it's more to set up new regulations and rules and and that kind of thing. And there's an article posted at the New York Times by I can't remember the person's name, but they basically said that some of the measures that the FTC is putting in place against Intel, or they want to put in place against Intel rather, seem to leave the door open for Nvidia to enter the x86 business in a more direct manner, right? So right now, Nvidia has never publicly said that they wanted to make an x86 processor. They've never talked about it in any kind of shape or form because, one, you have to have a license for it. There was rumors earlier in the year, maybe late last year, about Nvidia buying VIA, who has an x86 license but doesn't have.
I wonder if the license is transferable though.
That's the thing. They are not transferable.
Oh.
If Nvidia were to buy VIA, they would lose their x86 license. That's why when AMD wanted to split off their manufacturing arm to Global Foundries, there was this huge legal battle about whether or not AMD would even still have access to the x86 license from Intel after that. And that was all settled in that $1.25 billion check from a couple of months ago. But one of these measures in here says that it would prohibit Intel from including or enforcing terms in its licensing agreements to restrict the ability of licensees to change ownership. So that directly indicates an issue, or to the point where Intel would have to let people maybe not sell their x86 license, but if two companies merge or two companies split, one of them will be able to keep that x86 license. And so if something like this were to go through, one of the possibilities would be Nvidia buying a company that does have an existing x86 license, like VIA. It would also allow them potentially more wiggle room to build their own part and kind of force Intel to give them a license to it. There are a lot of instances in the different measures that the FTC is providing where they really want to push Intel to open things up. The one at the top of the story claims that they want to require Intel to make available technology to others via licensing or other means, so that other companies can make parts that interoperate with Intel CPUs or chipsets. And that basically goes directly to the point where NVIDIA could not make a chipset for Linfield, and they can't make a chipset for Pine Trail because those use a new DMI bus that Intel decided not to license to anybody else. So that's why we talked about Ion and Ion 2 last week. Ion 2 basically had to be just a discrete GPU that could attach through PCI Express to the new Pine Trail platform, the new Atom architecture, because it used DMI to connect to the CPU to the chipset. So NVIDIA didn't have a license for that. Therefore, the Ion chipset couldn't work with the newer Atom products. And so, again, the FTC, it's almost like it makes sense. Obviously, I'm sure NVIDIA was lobbying for a lot of these things to be put in place, and maybe VIA as well, because I mean, you remember VIA and Intel had a lot of bus licensing lawsuits back in the day as well, and it didn't turn out well for VIA. They got blocked out of it, and because of that, their chipset market share dwindled to almost nothing, to where the company is today. So maybe VIA and NVIDIA have a lot, they have a lot of common enemies in that one big enemy of Intel, I guess. So it would seem that if the FTC is able to get these things pushed through, and who knows what kind of timeline that would actually be in. I don't think the actual trial is supposed to be until September of next year, that the possibility exists for NVIDIA to wiggle its way into x86. I still debate the value of that, how much extra work would be involved in the x86 product and delivering it and creating this whole platform versus maybe focusing on what NVIDIA is doing now with Tegra and high-performance computing and the benefits of GPUs in general. I think GPUs are becoming more and more important, and it might be, if they can survive long enough in this manner, wait for GPUs to become more important than CPUs, then they have an advantage. So
I'm just looking at Steve Perlman playing with the iPhone. Wow.
Yes.
If OnLive goes online, it's going to be big. I have the frame rates look good. Latency is not bad. And wow.
I mean, it could be really cool. I mean, when you talk about the iPhone and talking about playing a game like Crysis, obviously that's not the ideal input device, but
But you could design games that were better for it. I mean, the iPhone is good for a lot of games.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of great potential for it. Another little random story I saw today was somebody created what is essentially a remote PlayStation 3 playing device that has a screen and control. It looks like a PSP or a Game Boy, but it connects to the PlayStation 3 via wireless connection. So you can play Modern Warfare 2 on this little handheld device
Wow.
inside your house.
Neat.
Not a whole lot of use for that since you have to be within Wi-Fi range, but interesting technology-wise.
There's money in this, and what it does is it takes gaming from the current status, which is you buy a game, you put it on a platform, they get $60, and that's all they get. Or maybe you pay for Xbox Live and they get a few bucks a month, to being more like cable television, where you rent the game month after month after month. And,
you have a subscription. You can play as many games as you want.
It's a good model.
Netflix type of deal.
Yeah, it's a very good model for the cable companies and for OnLive and for the game companies. No wonder they've got EA and other companies lining up.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You don't think Comcast and
these
those guys are what? Just wouldn't they love to put another $25 a month charge on your account?
They're drooling for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So the user interface that they're showing there looks slick. It looks nice. It looks
great. Look at all the live video.
I have no idea if they're actually doing it remotely, or if maybe they have a local server for this demonstration for the students. They want to make sure we didn't have any issues or anything like that. But it's cool.
Well, FTW seems to think it's pretty cool. So, and he's using it.
That would have to be the guy then.
First we've heard of anybody actually using it. So that's pretty neat.
Yep. Cool.
So I'm looking forward to CES. I know you are too. This is going to be a wonderful time for all of us, even if there's not a lot of new stuff. Before we finish up, do you want to start doing Twitter questions? I notice you have some Twitter questions in here.
Well, because of how few stories we actually had this week, I thought, oh man, we're going to be done in 15 minutes. Obviously, that didn't happen.
No. We've never been done in 15 minutes. We can BS on nothing for an hour.
I try to cut down on the rambling, but obviously...
No. This is what we're here for, is to fill their time. Let's do some questions. I've got one for you. This is from Vinyl Freak. The Asus add-on card for USB 3.0 and SATA 3. You actually got a motherboard with USB 3 and SATA 6 gigabits. But he says you talked about an Asus add-on card. Is that available yet?
I have one right here. So this is what he's talking about right here. So this is a PCI Express x4 card. It has 3 chips on it. It has the big chip in the center there is the PLX PCI Express bridge chip. It has an NEC USB 3.0 controller and a Marvell SATA 6 controller. And then you can see up here, you've got your actual SATA 6 connections, and then on the front, your blue-colored USB 3.0 connections. Now, this card is made by ASUS. I was actually under the assumption that it would be out already when they sent this to us. You can basically plug this into any motherboard that has a free PCI Express x4 or greater slot, and then install the drivers for USB 3 and SATA 6, and boom, your system is USB 3.0 and SATA 6G ready. It's only going to cost $29. This is what they told me the price was going to quote on this, but it is not available yet. And trust me, because we keep asking, because Alan wants a couple of these for his storage testing beds. And I would like to be able to have another one as well, so I can send him this one, and we're still trying to get a hold of them. It worked flawlessly, plugged it in, installed the drivers, and it worked just as well as the integrated onboard solutions. So not available yet, but hopefully soon.
Soon. And do you have a thought about how much it might cost?
I think it's going to be under $30.
Wow, boy, that'd be great.
That's the big selling point for me, is that they...
Is the bus fast enough? The PCI Express, I guess, is fast enough.
Yeah.
You get the full 6 gigabits?
It's 4 lanes, so yeah, you'd be able to get the full speed out of it. So, yeah, it should be good enough.
Ryan is on Twitter, by the way, at Ryan Shrout, RyanShrout, if you want to follow him and ask questions. Old Beach Bum asks on Twitter, if you only had $500, where would you trim your budget? He says that's a stretch for me as is.
Where would you trim on your budget PC? So I guess he's asking me what would I take out of kind of our budget PC.
You get a cheap video card.
Yeah.
Because a good $99 card is going to be pretty good. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. So if I look at
cheap.
the budget leaderboard on the PC Perspective site now, it's like 572.
That's close enough.
So it's pretty close.
Yeah.
If you need to cut lower than that.
Do you go to AMD if you go that low?
Yeah, we have our current system is an AMD quad-core processor. It's a $99 CPU and a $98 motherboard, $140 graphics card. Still got 4 gigs of memory. So I mean, it's a great system. It's hard for me to find something to really cut out of a $572 system. I mean, you could go a little bit cheaper on the power supply, but I tend to think you want to keep a higher quality unit.
I agree.
You know,
this
you
is
could
about
check
as low as you're going to go. I'll be honest with you. And you don't even include a case here, do you? Is there a case in this?
No, there's no case included in that. I mean, because if you go down to a triple core processor from AMD, you might drop $30 off the price of the system. So if money is really, really tight, that's one option. $98 for a motherboard. You could probably get another motherboard to support this.
You can get a cheaper video card than the Sapphire. I mean, I guess what you'd be doing is you'd get a little bit less in every category. There's nothing you're going to drop.
Right. That would be my recommendation: is maybe go one step cheaper on everything and see if that gets you to where your budget needs to be.
You're only putting 2 gigs of RAM in this thing.
Is it only 2? Yeah. Okay. I mean, two would be is still plenty for this. So I mean, it's reasonable.
You could get, what about getting cheap? I mean, this $73 for 2 gigs is expensive. What about getting cheaper RAM?
Yeah, definitely do that. Let me see if were we talking about 2 or 4 gigs? Yeah, it is 2 gigs, 2 gig kit. Chances are, if you look for,
you could get
value select, Corsair value select memory. You know, you're not going to get better timings and that kind of stuff. You could probably get that memory for $50 or less, maybe $40 for a 2 gig kit. Maybe even slightly less than that.
You might get this down to 500,
good,
including a case, if you sliced everywhere.
Yeah, I think you could. Just you know, be careful what you're picking, and people, you know, ask questions on different forums and that kind of stuff to make sure you're not getting the wrong products in that regard. I mean, it looks like you could get a $10, $15 cheaper power supply, $10 or $15 cheaper motherboard and processor, and all that would add up to getting you down to $500 or below.
Yeah.
But
this is a great resource on PC.
Drop anything.
Yeah, this is a great resource on PC Perspective. PCPer.com. Click the hardware leaderboard, and you've got. I actually talked about this on the radio show the other day because you've got builds for the Dream system, the high-end system, the mid-range system, and the budget system, ranging from $572 to $3,906. So you can really go there and put together a great system. I mean, you've got all the information you need.
Yep, that was kind of the goal, is because I had locally a lot of people and friends and family would ask me, "Well, what system should I build?"
And you update this all the time, so it's
updated at least a couple of times a month at the least.
It's the latest and greatest.
So you can go there and you can get all the information on one page, because you know, if you don't keep up on the hardware, it's hard to decide you want to build new. If you've been out of computers for a few months and you want to build a new PC, it's hard to go back and try to find all the relevant reviews for all the components to compare. And so we tried to kind of consolidate it all into a one-page, easy to look through entry.
Time for one more question from Mr. Hyde81. What do you think of using SSDs for gaming rigs? Games are updated frequently. Wouldn't it degrade the SSD quicker?
No, I don't think that's relevant. I don't think. I mean, the short answer is no. It's not going to degrade it any more than reading and writing any other files.
What you really want to do, you want 2 drives. You want a boot drive with your operating system and applications on the SSD, and put the temp drive and the page file drive, the swap drive, on a mechanical drive along with your data, because that's where the most churn happens. And it's always better to have a swap drive on a different page file on a different drive. Now it's a lot slower drive. I don't know. Maybe Alan would disagree, but that seems like the way to do it.
Honestly, I don't. I mean, that's my configuration. I have an SSD. It's our boot drive. It has all the applications on it. But I didn't move the page file. I didn't move anything like that. Just left it.
With load balancing or whatever they call it,
the trim commands and
they distribute the reads and writes. You don't have to worry about burning them out as you used to have to.
I think the lifespan of flash memory is going to be longer than people are expecting. There's a lot of people who just have this inherent fear of flash memory and what it's going to do to their systems and all that kind of stuff. I don't have that inherent fear that it's all suddenly going to die on you or anything like that. And I am perfectly fine. In other words, I have my whole system running off a single SSD and didn't move everything around, and we update games, and you know, I'm reading and writing video files and audio files and images and this kind of stuff to it all the time. So gaming, I mean, the types, I mean, he's talking about like getting WoW updates and patches and that kind of stuff. That's not gonna, don't concern yourself with that. No.
Ryan, all we have to do is watch you every week on this show, and if SSDs are a problem, he'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah. Trust me, if we have a guy on staff, if SSDs start failing, he will be the first to know.
You'll be the second.
Yep.
We do this show every Wednesday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific at live.twit.tv, so you can watch live. Of course, it's now a podcast. Yay! Yay!
Yay!
Only took us a year. Yay! So you can get it from twit.tv. If you go to twit.tv and look at Twitch, you'll see where to subscribe on iTunes or the Zune Store or any other podcatcher. You could download it, of course, from twit.tv, and video coming soon. But right now, just audio versions available. I think video like in the next month or so, very quickly.
Cool.
So this is a great show. We'll see you at CES. This is very exciting next week.
Yep. So next week we won't be recording at the same time.
Nope. We'll be on the 6th through the 10th. Just go to live.twit.tv and we'll be on. Probably starting at 6 p.m. Pacific.
I'm sure Dane will have a well-manicured Twit Live calendar.
Go look at the calendar, yeah.
Down to the 15-minute marks.
Dane's the calendar guy. And then Leo will proceed to completely ignore it and be behind the entire time.
As long as he knows that going forward.
Oh, it's just part of the deal.
Yep.
Thanks, Ryan. You'll find Ryan at pcper.com. You can also email him. Now, I don't know if we've worked this out yet or not. Your internet service provider was blocking email from twit.tv, but I think Bear figured out it's because our reverse DNS was misconfigured.
Yeah, I think it's fixed. I had one person tell me today that it bounced again, but I've gotten a couple of emails on it since. So it sounds to me like DNS might just be propagating still.
So his email is ryan@twit.tv, and that's the best way to reach him. And we'll talk again next week, Mr. Ryan Shrout. Oh, and stay tuned tonight if you're watching live, because the PC Perspective podcast he's got two. He's got Twitch and PC Per tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at live.twit.tv. Interesting.
Since we're talking about OnLive, we're going to talk about our good buddy Paul Thurrott's article about how PC gaming is doomed.
Yes.
We're going to talk about and debate that.
That should be fun.
PC Perspective podcast.
He raised the hackles of quite a few PC gamers. When he said that, and I'm not sure he's far wrong, but I'll look forward to hearing your discussion.
I will be the devil's advocate on this. So
good. This will be interesting. Thank you, Ryan. We'll see you next time on Twitch. Good job.
Cool.
All right, sir.
I guess the next time I see you will be in Las Vegas.
At CES. I'll be the one with big dark circles under my eyes.
Yeah, I looked at I got an email today from the CEA. It said 7 days till CES. And I went, oh, no. Because I started thinking of all the stuff that I still have to get done before going to the show.
You should see the team today. I mean, they're just buzzing around.
Oh, I bet. And because we were debating whether or not we wanted to try to do any of that live stuff too. And I started looking at it and we started thinking, and I was like, you know what?
Do it with us.
We're going through all that trouble.
Do it with us.
I'm going to see how theirs works out. We'll do the recorded stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out from there.
Guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I said, we'll let them keep that. It's right in their name. Twit Live.
It says it in the name. All right, Ryan. Take care.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye. Mm-hmm.